Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Matt, Dave, Vito, and Luca. I'm back. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good to have you back.
Good to be back. Although sure? I have to say, I've gone to a few games in my time. That Monday one was a good one to go to.
For sure.
That was 6 goals. The place was rocking. They were doing the wave. I was doing the wave with everybody. It was fantastic.
Awesome.
A lot of fun. Some of the most fun I've had at hockey.
Right?
Yep. So everybody had a really good time, and then I watched the episodes that you guys did in my absence. Great job, in spite of me not being here. You guys did your best, and I always appreciate that. So now that that's out of the way, Dave, we have a little call out for our sponsor friends.
Yeah, of course. Our boys at Snap. Check them out. Best place off island to watch a game. They're having a huge, I know it's not Habs related, but a huge Super Bowl party. I mean, they also have a deal for Habs game. Every Habs night, chicken wings, $1. Absolutely fantastic. And they're having a huge Super Bowl party where they're giving away Al's tickets. And they have $1 chicken wings for that too as well. And a nacho touchdown tower or whatever they call it. So check them out at Snap Bar Sportif. There are boys off island in Rigo. It's the best place to watch a game.
It's very good, sirs. Speaking of the games, speaking of the Canadiens, some interesting stuff. I think the number one thing I really want to talk to you guys about this time around, right out the gate. So the 3-goalie carousel, goalie controversy, goalie catastrophe, whatever we're calling it, whatever they're calling it, is done. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know your take on the decision that was made. So it was, in fact, Fowler that got sent back down, rubbed a couple people the wrong way. Curious to know your take on that. Do you think it was the right call? And more importantly, do you think it was the right time to send one of the guys down? Davide, start with you.
Yeah, there was absolutely the right call. I think that they to be honest, they got kind of lucky in that it actually played out exactly probably the way you could have pretty much drawn it up better of how it played out. I still think it was the wrong move to call him up. I think you could have just exercised a little bit of patience, done what you kind of did already with Montembeault by sending him down for a conditioning stint without having to call Fowler up. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's just he was rushed. I don't think he was ready to be in that position, and I think you saw it. He started 10 games and he won 4 of them. That's not something if you would predict the top goalie prospect that everybody was hyping up. I don't think that's the result anybody really wanted, and it's not as if it was during a time where the Habs they were first in the Atlantic in some stretches of that period. So it's not as if they were playing poorly. They put up a ton of goal support for him. I think they averaged more than 3 goals a game for each game that he played. Obviously, they were shut out for that. I think 2 of the games, but I mean, other than that, they put up a lot of run support. You can't really say. I just think that he was put in a position through no fault of his own to not really succeed. He could have ran with it. He didn't really, and it doesn't speak to his future. It doesn't speak to anything. It doesn't give you area. It shouldn't give you. Pause or concern or anything, because there's a lot of development still to be done with the Rocket, and there's still time for him to rebound. He wasn't a disaster either. He showed that poise and he showed his skill and his pedigree. Just at the end of the day, he was given an opportunity to run with the ball, which I bet that's kind of what they kind of hoped for. And he, in my opinion, did it. I think there's a lot of things for him to work on. And I think at the end of the day, I think it was the wrong move to call him up. I think they could have reached to this scenario where it was back to Montembeault-Dobesh by maybe calling up Kakinen to back up Dobesh for a while. Internal competition is always good, but bringing up your stud to just kind of have him there, I don't know. I don't really think that was the right move, but it was definitely the right move to put him back down and to see how he does in Laval for the rest of this season.
Okay, picking up on that, Luca, I'll add to the question by also adding a little part that I think maybe is a tiny bit of a hot take from Dave. Do you agree with him that it was a mistake to even bring him up in the first place? And the other being, of course, now that he's sent back down, do you agree with that from management? And was it the right time for a goalie, any goalie, to be sent down?
I was actually going to touch on that. Honestly, it was definitely the right move to send him down. It was the right time. If anything, it was even a little bit late. They sent him down. I said in the last episode, it's better to send him down so he could get his reps in Laval. Honestly, to bring him up was a mistake. I don't think so. That's just my opinion, because you want to give the kid a taste of, the big leagues, right? It was a little bit longer than I would have done it, but regardless. But he definitely shows a lot of promise. Yeah, he fizzled out at the end there. But at the beginning, he was definitely doing pretty well. I mean, we saw flashes of the talent that he was touted for having. He definitely has the poise, the maturity. He has everything that you need in a goalie in Montreal for sure, 100%. People were like saying, "Oh, reminiscent of Carey Price because of how like calm and he's handling the media very well." But we all saw how he was handling it towards the end, game wise, not media wise. Yeah, it was a little bit late. They sent him down. Good. He got a little taste of the big leagues. I'm happy for him. But now it's time for him to shine in Laval.
All right, Vito, your take.
100% agree with the fact that he got sent down. He needed to get sent down at this point. Clearly, the other teams are starting to get the scouting reports on him, and they were starting to score, on his blocker side, stick side, and they were and at that level of competition, when they're already getting a read of you that early on in your career, it means go back down, go work on that, and try to play up, change it. Because the one thing I got to say about Fowler, and I think I said it in a previous episode, is that if you guys remember this, I said one game he looks like he's the goalie of the future. He's the future number one goalie. He's got the calmness, the Carey Price calmness, and then he'll go, on his second or third game, and he kind of looks like Jake Allen. And it's not so much that I'm throwing any shots at Jake Allen. It's just that the expectations are very high about Jake Fowler. So I think it was the right call to send him down. At the same time, I don't think I agree with Dave in saying that he should have never been called up, because when he came in and when they called him up, it was kind of like the right timing. Montembeault was really struggling. Dobesh was playing way too much at this point, and bringing in Fowler gave Montembeault time to figure out his game. He got sent down to Laval in a conditioning stint, and Jacob Fowler played well enough that he piled up 4 wins. Yes, he got 4 losses, but the 4 losses, 2 out of the 4 were actually in the later part of his stint with Montreal. So he helped the Montreal Canadiens enough to still keep them where they had to be and where we see them today in the standings. But now, once we got to the tail end of this stint, that's when you started seeing, Jake Fowler was starting to struggle a little more. It was, 4-goal games instead of maybe 1 or 2. But I think that internal competition that he brought in, I think it kind of did a reset for the entire team in terms of goaltending. So while I agree that the timing was right to send him down so he could go work on his game and play much more meaningful games in Laval than he is with Montreal, let's say, I think that it was the right time to bring him up. He did get a taste. He knows what has to likely be worked on, and going forward, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with Jacob Fowler. I do think that next year, or maybe even by the end of this year, we will see him again.
I mean, I agree with that. I think your two take more so than Dave, in an essence, because I really felt like if we go back a couple of weeks when they made that call up, something had to be done, like drastically. Now, maybe it was Kakinen, and maybe you can make the argument maybe Kakinen comes up, perhaps. But I think they saw what Fowler was doing in the AHL. I think they saw, like we're all suggesting, that this is the future. This is the heir apparent. Why not reward a bit like they do with some of the players, the forwards and the defensemen? They bring them up when they're playing very well in Laval to give them a little bit of a taste. Why not bring them up? Why not see what you have? Where you can look back, hindsight being 2020, did he have to stay as long as he did? Probably not. I think that would have ultimately helped Dobesh a bit more. It's hard to shake out of my head the comments he made that game, a couple games back there, about he doesn't know when he's going in, and I've only talked to Marty St. Louis once ever. I was misinterpreted and all this stuff. I was
lost in translation.
I know, but the point still remains. He's like, I don't know when I'm playing again. I play, we win. I might not play again for 2 weeks, and that's the nature of when you have 3 goalies. So once he should have probably been sent back down once the other 2 got their bearings again, probably after Monty came back from his conditioning stint. You could have worked it out. But again, if he's out there playing well, and I really think a lot of the instances where those games are lost, there are sometimes he got beat clear, sure. I wouldn't go so far to say the book's out on him. I think the team itself, if you go look back at how the team played, the defensive lapses in those games were very bad. a lot of high danger chances.
You're not wrong on that. You're not wrong on that.
So
but when
plays
two or
a
three
factor.
goals, when 2 or 3 goals in a single game going on the same side and the same shot and the same.
Yeah, you're talking about the last game. You're talking about the last game that he was up here and then they sent him down right after. And then perhaps, right? So it's not a problem. I think the thing that I do agree the most is what Dave is suggesting, that this worked out as perfect as almost it could have been. Realistically, he came up, bought you some time, got your starter and your backup back on stable ground again when they were completely off the cliff, and played well enough that he didn't hurt you. You saw that there's really something special with him. There's something there. And now he goes back down to get his reps back in and play strong minutes in the AHL. So I'm in agreement with it should have been him, not any of the others, not to throw Monty on waivers, even though his last outing, not so hot, but whatever, we can get into that another time. And Dobesh, of course, winning games again. So realistically, we're all in agreement. It was the right guy to go and the right time to go. We can maybe have a little bit of debate whether he should have come up to begin with, but that's a different story. Unless, Dave, you got one more thing you want to add to that one?
No, not at all, man. I think it could have been resolved with Kakinen coming up, to be honest.
Maybe.
And I think at the end of the day, it was a weird decision, and it kind of like it could have gone so much worse. There was so many other ways. They were hoping, obviously, plan A would have been him taking the ball and running with it, and just absolutely being the guy for the rest of the season. That didn't work out as planned. So it kind of worked out that Monty's back, but like, what happens now if they falter again? What happened? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like the situation is it's in a weird situation where you're going to call him back up again, like 3 weeks from now. If we're back in the situation where Monty's struggling and Dobesh is not consistent, what's the plan then?
That's a good question. I don't know if they go back to him again. I don't
Why
know.
not? If calling him up was the right move, why wouldn't you?
Because at that point,
there's something to be said about the goalie coach.
His development at that point. I think you brought him up. He was up here consistently doing 1-1-1 with the other guys, and now he's back. Like, now you ride your goalies. Unless if you make a trade or you do something a little bit more drastic, I can't see them going back to him and bringing them up again. I mean, I guess they could. They're entitled to do it, but I don't think they do it.
I don't know. There's something to be said about goalies going to Laval and working with that goalie coach and coming back, and it's like everything's reset. There's something
about that guy, huh? That's true. Interesting.
Well, we'll see. I guess it's just, to me, it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I would have done it. I just personally in development, and I guess the book's out, and we'll see what happens. And there's going to be a clear answer to whether it was the right move. A year or two from now, will it even have mattered? But my gut tells me that it was just, I wouldn't have done it.
Okay. Fair enough. I am curious, though, because a lot of the games that the Habs seem to be having trouble with, when you start looking at the majority of their losses, of recent anyways, and I guess you can kind of extrapolate it back, they have a much harder time with the big physical teams. I think that's pretty apparent. I think you see them out there. They throw their bodies around. The Habs are a little bit smaller of a team. They are a little bit more speedy, skill set wise. That's what their focus is on. And it seems like they're having a harder time getting around when they play against these heavier physical teams that make a little bit more opportunities, clear a little bit more space for their skilled guys. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're seeing that they're playing against a team that gets many high danger shots on net, which results in a lot of goals. So my question for you here, we'll start with you, Luca, with this one, is when you think about what the Canadiens are missing, and specifically when you think about, like what I'm suggesting, how they struggle a bit more against these more physical teams, these teams that have bigger guys, more like I don't want to say like grunts, but like just meaner, tougher guys on their team. I'm thinking the Tom Wilsons, right? They don't have to be bad players. He's a very good player and physical. Yeah. Is the plan, if it were up to you, do you think the plan should be the Habs should go out and attempt to acquire players of that ilk and bring them into the fold to fetter them through the lineup a bit more to become a bigger, more grittier team like that? Or because of the cohesiveness that the team has right now and how the team is seemingly gelling quite well, should there be, I should say, maybe a stronger emphasis on the coaches to try to coach up the team to mitigate the bigger players of the other team, to find a way to use their speed and their skill to somehow get away from the bigger guys and be able to get, however it is that they're going to do it. I'm sure they're attempting to do that now, but find a way internally to figure it out. What do you think is the more plausible, the better of those options?
Which one is the best? Okay, well, first I want to say, the Habs have always had this problem, right? We were always a small team. The Smurfs, they always made those comments about the Canadiens. It was the case before. It's the case now. We're a bit bigger. They're a bit bigger, but they're not big enough. Obviously, every time they play a bigger, more physical team, they struggle. You see it. Everybody sees it. Should they go and acquire big, physical, talented players? Who would say no to that? Just because you might mess the chemistry. Every player that they've brought in so far has gelled in and fit in immediately. Look at Texier. Any player that they brought in, obviously there's always exceptions to the rule, but any player that they brought in immediately just fell in perfectly, gelled in, they instant chemistry. So I think that's the better option. If you're going to try to outcoach the other team, Marty's not the guy, I don't think. He's still a rookie coach, right? And you see his lapse of judgment, his time management. It's not great with the players. It's a learning curve for him as well. So what do you do in that situation? Personally, I would go after the big talented. Who doesn't want a big talent?
Well, okay, so let me be more specific then, because obviously, big, talented, good. Obvious. That's a simple one. I'm talking more like bottom six guys. Like, not that they're bad, but they're big body guys. They're guys that move players around. They're the grinders that you sort of, need in those long playoff series type scenarios. But in order to get those guys, you'll probably have to give up some talent, some prospects, and you're going to have to make the room for them on your roster. So that's the sort of the opportunity cost that comes with acquiring that. So with that in mind, you're still more geared towards this is something that they should do between now and the trade deadline. Get bigger, get tougher.
I still think so. Yeah, because look, they're at the part of the rebuild right now where it's you're not trying to you basically they need to start moving assets to get those players. Now is the time to start moving the picks and the extra prospects that might not make the team because they're overflowing with players right now. We've talked about it in the past. We don't know where they're going to fit in anymore. So, I think they should start moving players around. I think they should start moving prospects, picks to get that talented, big, even bottom six. Don't trade 2 firsts or whatever to get a bottom 6 player. But they should start moving assets to try to get that big, gritty, physical, slightly less talented, but still talented player on the bottom 6.
Fair enough. Vito, what do you think about that?
I have a player in mind that I would want them to go after.
I love it.
I won't say it's a 4th line player. In fact, on this specific team, he's a top 6 player. Probably miscast a little bit, but I think he would fit in great. I would want the Montreal Canadiens to go find a way to get Dmitri Voronkov from Columbus. Big guy, physical, can do some secondary scoring. Underrated a little bit. I think he would fit in very well on a 3rd line and move up on the 2nd line when there's injuries. Obviously there's the 2C that everybody wants, including us, that Montreal should go chase. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that from now to the trade deadline. I just think that Columbus there's a chance there that they can do something with Montreal and some of the assets that Montreal have, and they've traded in the past to kind of make a move or do something to kind of shift the gears a little bit in Columbus ever since Kekalainen left. So if I were Montreal, that's somebody I'd target. It's easy to link Blake Coleman because he was already in the rumor mill. You guys all heard me on the last episode. The only way I would trade for Blake Coleman, given his age, is if you're flipping somebody like Brendan Gallagher and other assets the other way to make the money work and make it all make sense. But they need to get bigger. But at the same time, I think the solution is coming. If they don't want to go and get size, I think there's Florian Xhekaj that's there. That's going to be coming up within the next, year, maybe even by the time the playoffs roll around. If Montreal's still in the playoffs by that point, there's also Luke Tuck that they who plays a physical game, who could be a 4th liner that can maybe fit in on the Montreal roster. I think they're looking and hoping that internally that can be resolved to a certain degree, at least from the bottom six perspective. I just think that they need a bit more beef on the top six as well on the wings. It's not just, we're not just looking at the bottom six, because even Montreal's first line, it's Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. They're not the biggest boys.
Yeah, but Kirby Dach's a big boy and he's coming back.
Kirby Dach is
Kirby
a
Dach
tall
is-
boy,
yeah.
but he's not a big boy. He doesn't play a big boy's game.
Yeah.
That is the what I'm alluding to there. But okay, very good. One thing to touch on though, because I think you threw out a name that probably the majority of the Habs fan base has never even heard of before.
The 20-goal scorer.
This is the interesting thing, right? So for those that perhaps are unfamiliar with this 6'5", 234-pound Russian out of Columbus, currently 16 goals, 14 assists, 30 points on this season, 40 out of 48 games. Last year had 23 goals.
Secondary scoring.
Those
are numbers
those are good secondary scoring numbers. Yeah,
correct.
And with a big boy.
Yeah. So is he available? Don't know. I think that he could become available for the right price. Anybody, he's not Connor McDavid at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They could figure something out there, and Montreal's got the assets. They have, I've said it now for the last 3 episodes. At some point, a lot of these prospects and picks, Montreal can't keep them all. They're going to have to start flipping some of those for immediate help, and they might benefit the other teams more than Montreal at this point.
Well, quickly before I jump to you, Dave, would you be comfortable with trading, if that's your guy, if that's the boy, if that's who you want, your boy, would you be comfortable trading a guy, a top quality prospect, like not a 1-for-1 hockey trade, but maybe you throw in a guy for salary purposes, but in order to entice Columbus to do something like that, it would probably need to be something significant. I mean, are you prepared to walk away with trading an A quality prospect and plus in order to do it? I'm trying to think of names here.
Michael Age.
Well, I don't know, because they got so many defensemen, right?
That's an A-level prospect. That's an A-level prospect.
Well, no, I'm thinking.
I don't think Voronkov would ever cost an A-level prospect. To be honest, he would cost something for sure, because at the end of the day, he's a 25-year-old, 6'5", 230-pound, 20-goal scorer. Right?
When you think about the Canadiens, they got a lot of defensive prospects. Would you be comfortable parting ways with a Reinbacher or an Enstrom or something to that effect?
I would flip Reinbacher. I would now consider flipping Reinbacher for somebody like Robert Thomas.
Okay, now you've completely
I know,
a whole other place here.
Because you brought up Reinbacher, but I'm
throwing out names.
If I'm gonna flip Reinbacher, it's not to go get Voronkov. It's to go get Robert Thomas. It's to go get that 2C. It's being moved, and especially with Pickford there, I think it changes Montreal's plans a little bit with the right-hand defense. So they did sign him to an entry-level contract. If you would have asked me this summer about Reinbacher, I would have said there's no chance Montreal's moving him. They're investing in. They're invested in him. They drafted him 5th overall. I think that plans might have changed a little bit. I'm not saying they're going out of their way to shop him or get rid of him, but I do think that for that bona fide 2C, you're gonna have to pay something. And St. Louis, I think it's Armstrong's the GM, right? In St. Louis.
I think so.
Yeah. He said that in order to, and it was through X, that he would be looking for something like the Quinn Hughes trade to move Robert Thomas. I don't think it would ever cost that much, because Quinn Hughes and Robert Thomas are just not in the same stratosphere, in my opinion. It's not. I'm not crapping on Robert Thomas, but it's Quinn Hughes.
One is one of the top players in the league. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So I do think that a piece like Reinbacher or a Caden Gooley or something like that would have to go the other way.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't want to detract from the question too fast. But Dave, if you wanted to pick up on that.
On what? On what he's talking about with Pickford and Reinbacher and making him expendable? Yeah. I mean, that definitely is a path I could see. I mean, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, or whatever that expression is with Pickford. I mean, look, WHL, you've seen it a lot. There's a lot. You go look at the last 10 years, the top 10 goal scorers or whatnot. I mean, most of them you never even heard of. So it's not necessarily that to take away from his achievements. But it's just, you kind of have to hold the brakes, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be moving on from a top level prospect like Reinbacher. But I get what Vito's saying. I mean, I think that the fact that within this organization, they just seem to have a knack to go grab those guys. I mean, he was drafted in the 3rd round, I think. Like it does solidify your gut in saying like, okay, maybe I could be dealing with these guys, because that's my answer to your question, Matt. Enough with these like middle bottom 6 guys. They have enough of them on their roster. I don't care if you need size. If you need size, bring up Jack-Eye. If that's what really what you want, you bring up Fleury and Jack-Eye and work it through. And maybe that's what they'll have to do come playoff time, because you see what happened with the Capitals last year in the playoffs. At the end of the day, though, like it's crowded enough down there, man. You don't need to add more players like that. If you want to get big, if you want to get tougher, you have to go out, work that into your top 6, your top 6, and go work on getting an actual top 6 guy and address it that way. I think it's a big mistake to just keep adding guys that are going to fit in your bottom 6. Like there's a finite amount of roster room. They're already crowded. They're already going to have to make roster moves, and then you're going to come and roll the dice on another guy. Like 20 goals is nice, and I get it. I'm not saying it would be a bad move, but I'm just saying like they need to go out and solidify that top 6. Why not make that part of your toughness and getting bigger, and get a guy who plays that way if that's what you want to go and that's the route you want to go? I'm not convinced that that's necessarily their biggest issue. I mean, I think on defense also they're not that tough, other than the Jack-Eye there. I think they just need to there's a lot of issues, obviously, but I don't think that getting tougher, getting bigger is a prime issue at the end of the day. That's likely going to be a problem going forward, and it's a systems thing and the way they manage it. But they have to focus now on getting a talented guy that could play that role, as opposed to just jamming up their bottom 6 with guys like that. I've seen enough of it. So
to that end, then I'll pivot into this. I have a guy to bring up as a potential target. This is was, in fact, at the time anyways, the highest touted prospect that you can be. He was drafted 1st overall. And he's currently on a team that is, well, I'm not even sure what exactly they're doing, but to cut through all the suspense, the New York Rangers have issued yet again one of those messages to their fans saying, sorry, we're not at where we're at. We're going to have to make tough decisions and all this kind of stuff. And now the book's out. It looks like for the majority of the team, they've identified, I think, 3 or 4 key players, part of their core. But guys like Panarin, for example, have already been told, hey, you're not part of the future. And then Alexis Lafreniere also, seemingly, according to the insiders, is available depending on what comes back. So clearly, a 1st overall pick, a guy from Quebec, this is obviously going to be something that's talked about. I'm sure it has already been talked about, but to bring it up now, you talk about skill, you talk about availability, you talk about maybe not needing the biggest guy in the world to come. Would acquiring Alexis Lafreniere be something on your checklist of things to kind of go in and validate and see, knowing, of course, as well, in case if you don't know, Jeff Gorton was one of the key guys over there in New York when he was drafted 1st overall. So obviously very intimate knowledge of the player. So what do you think about that, Dave?
No, me. You're talking to me.
Oh,
all right.
Only because you just answered. Yeah.
He's a tough one, because he's another guy that you're kind of, I mean, you've seen his potential, right? He's almost scored 30 goals in the NHL. He's a 1st overall pick. You saw him play well in the playoffs, but again, not a top 6, like top 3 role. Like, so he's a guy that you're kind of just, he gives you pause a little bit. And I know he fits the mold exactly of this team in terms of this is exactly the type of guy they rolled. But I think now the price is going to be too costly to go get him, in my opinion.
But don't they have enough in the coffers to?
But is that what
that's their guy?
Who they want to go for?
Assume that it is who they want to go for. Would you be comfortable with it?
No, I think they have to aim higher. Okay. I think they have to aim higher than a guy who's never hit 30 goals, or you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to go for it at this point, and you're empty you have this war chest, right? And everybody's like, empty this war chest a little bit for this guy and this guy. And yes, you eventually have to start giving out your assets, but you have to manage it properly. And it's just, I don't know if he was not a good guy from here, if he was not a former 1st overall pick, if he was not had any association with Jeff Gordon, would this be a guy who would interest you if he was playing for, I don't know, the Vancouver Canucks at this stage. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that I would go and overpay for a guy like that. So I think it's probably going to cost a little bit too much. But it's also a move that I could absolutely see happening, just because if you look at the mold, like, this is the guys that they're trying to fill in their roster with, and they love taking swings and they love taking this. But at the end of the day, you have to start hitting home runs here and stop with the swinging. You know, you have to actually hit something and get a guy who's. So again, I'm not saying they can't do both. They probably can, but it's just more roster guys, to me, it's just, this is where the problem is with having this many roster guys. It's just, I don't know. Like, you have to do so many mathematics and you have to rely on so many people taking guys on for you to make it work. And it's just, they put themselves in a difficult position.
I mean, they find ways, which is always fun and comical. Well, I mean, across the league, I should say, maybe not so much the Canadiens in particular, but you always look at these guys, you're like, how could they ever move X player? How could they ever acquire? I mean, look at Vegas for that matter. I mean, they shouldn't be able to acquire like anything, and yet they always manage to find ways. So if there's a true desire, if there's a true willingness to go get a player, I think that they'll do what they need to do. The question is, of course, and this is what the debate is right now, should he be that player? We'll jump the other way. Vito, do you think that that's the type of guy, specifically Lafreniere, that they should go and look to target to put in that top six?
I see how it can be attractive and how you could hype it up, and, you know, him being a local guy and all that, and a former first overall. But at the same time, I see it as he's getting paid $7.45 million until 2032. And it's they're going to have to fit him in, and they're going to have to take back cap and players to make the money work just for this season, and then they could figure it out for next year. And I think his development in New York got hindered a little bit, and I'm wondering, is that he comes to Montreal, let's say it all happens and they trade the assets that are necessary to acquire him. How much longer will it take for him to find his game, and whatever game that's going to be, and his role in Montreal? Another 2-3 years? That's going to bring him to 28 years old, around there, 27, 28. So
he's 24 right now.
But add 2-3 years to that, right? So it's going to take some time for him to find his role and whatnot, because I do believe that the New York Rangers kind of hurt his development. You know, they brought him in right away as a first overall pick because they didn't have the courage to say, hey, go develop in the minors. Go dominate there before you come up. They went with the first overall tag. And yes, he did have a almost 30-goal season, but that's it. And it's been hard for him ever since. So I agree with Dave. They're swinging for it, and I think that, you know, Montreal and with St. Louis, it could work. I just don't think that he's the right asset in the top six. And I just, you know, there was a year or two ago when Lafreniere was already in the rumor mill, and it's like, yeah, would you do Slavkovsky for Lafreniere 1-for-1? And, you know, I said no then, and it's even more so now. I'll say no again. So who would go the other way? It's I don't think the assets work for where New York is trying to retool. And then you have to add the other layer. There's no love between Drury and Jeff Gordon. So they're not gonna do each other any favors whatsoever. And the cost to acquire Lafreniere would be far more expensive for the Montreal Canadiens than probably any other team in the NHL. Because of that.
Speculation there a little bit. I mean, but listen, it's possible. I think we talked about this a little while ago. In fact, when we probably talked about Lafreniere last season or the season prior to that, I think the consensus was that a hockey deal will get done regardless of how they feel about each other. I don't think we didn't think that they disliked each other that much, that it's just a no trade. It's not happening. That said, the price, to Dave's point, might just be very, very elevated and not to the appetite of what the Canadiens are prepared to pay.
I do like that the Montreal Canadiens are going and getting a lot more local players, and like they're probably, like, I really do like that. I just don't know if Alexis Lafreniere and, like Dave said, emptying the war chest to go and get him is the right move, where they're at and where they're trying to get to.
To touch on that very quickly, I think Ken Hughes has bought himself a little bit of grace, because, I mean, he went and got, like, if you look at his deals, the most important deals, he got Veleno, he got Carrier, he signed Matheson, he got Bolduc, He technically got Texier, a guy, he's not from here, but he's a guy who could speak French to the French media. He did his service in terms of getting guys and working hard to find guys for here. Went back and got Dano.
He's got like six or seven local boys or Quebecers anyways here.
Other than Dobson, almost all of his moves were for guys from here. So at the end of the day, I think that was meant to like, hey, look, I'm really trying, but at the end of the day, you can't just go and keep doing that constantly. And
of course not.
We're talking about Lafreniere, a guy who's never hit 60 points. And at the end of the day, maybe 2 years ago, had they not taken a swing at Newhook, had they not taken a swing at Kirby Dach, had they not taken a swing at Patrick Laine, like maybe Lafreniere it probably would have made sense to bring him in and find him a role here. But they've taken too many of those swings, and they're still stuck with all those guys on this team still. And you're going to try to get a guy who's never had a 60-point, and you're going to try to slot him in on that first line. We all know that that's what would happen. And you're going to have to kind of hope and pray that his pedigree as a first overall pick will carry him through. And it's not what we're seeing in New York. And maybe a change of scenery would help. Maybe playing on a first line with – but again, it's a huge maybe. How many maybe guys does this team need? You need to move these assets to get a home run, a top 6 guy. That's what you need. I'm not interested anymore in the, oh man, he has the potential to be. I'm not interested anymore in those.
And you're entitled to your opinion, sir.
I'm not
Just like
saying it won't work
Luka
out.
is entitled to his opinion because he's prepared to move heaven and earth to acquire Lafreniere, right, Luka?
Heaven and earth, no. But look,
Okay.
I could definitely see both sides of the argument. To touch on the ask for Lafreniere, I can see it being a lot lower than everybody's speculating because, like Dave said, he never hit 60 points. He never, he hit 30 goals one time. And Hughes has done his magic many times. We've seen it. And he doesn't have to talk to Gordon. Like the jury doesn't have to talk to Gordon to get the deal done. He can talk directly to Hughes. And they're professionals, they're GMs, there's maybe bad blood that doesn't have anything to do with it. But Lafreniere in Montreal's market, first overall, look, there's a lot of pressure already on the local boys. There's a lot more pressure when you're a first overall pick. That's guaranteed. And I don't know how Lafreniere would be able to handle that, but the talent is definitely there. Look, I went to see him play when he was playing for the Armada. He's very good. He's good now, but he was very good back then. He's very fast, very shifty. You could tell he had the talent. Would I bring him here though? I don't know. Probably not.
The first overall comment that you said makes sense if it were Montreal who drafted him first overall. It wasn't Montreal's draft pick.
No, I understand, but it's still a local boy. It's still a first. You don't think?
Yeah.
You don't think we're gonna toss that in there? Oh, first overall pick from Quebec, like.
I think it would depend on what would go the other way. If a big piece like a fan favorite went the other way for Alexis Lafreniere, then yes, there's gonna be a lot of pressure. Yeah. If for whatever reason, I'm just gonna throw this out there, Patrick Laine is a piece that to make the money work goes the other way, and some other stuff to make it enticing for the New York Rangers that for their rebuild. Then I think some people are gonna be like, yeah, okay, whatever. Patrick Laine is right now slotted on the 4th line at $8.7 million. And you're going to go grab Alexis Lafreniere and slot him on the first line. I don't think the fans are going to care too much in terms of that. But if it was like, I don't know, if it was somebody that's a bit more of a fan favorite that people envision that this person's a lock for the future for the Montreal Canadiens, and that's who they move in order to go get somebody like Alexis Lafreniere, and Alexis Lafreniere falters even in Montreal, then I see that being a problem.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with that sort of, to Dave's point. I mean, as much as on paper, it checks a lot of boxes and it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of people, even the casual fan, can look to this and say, well, yeah, why not? Right. Look what's happening there. It all almost is too obvious. The bigger problem is realistically, I think at this particular point, maybe this isn't who he is. Maybe he has another gear. Maybe in a year or two, he's just a very late bloomer and he'll go off the rails, and it's possible. But at this particular point, you still want to keep your coffers full to maybe go and aim a little higher. I think that what Dave said makes the most sense. You might try to shoot for the moon and what is that expression? Shoot for the stars, land on the moon type thing. Like maybe he's your moon. Maybe that's what you'll end up with after you've exhausted other options. And perhaps that's when they do it. But you got to still maintain the leverage you have with the assets you have and still look to see if there's a bigger play to be done. I also think that there's a very good chance, to close on this, that by the pseudo trade deadline of the Olympics and the real trade deadline of this year, there's a chance the Canadiens make no moves. There's a real world
cap
scenario.
strap. They're right now they're cap strapped.
I mean,
right?
yeah. So
they're gonna make a move.
Curious.
I think they're gonna make a move to like somebody has to go so they can fit the roster players.
Go. But it might not even be for a player back, right? It might just be for whatever future considerations or picks or what have you. I mean, something has to give. But I digress. It'll be very curious to see what happens there. Let us know, as always, guys, in the comments, your takes on any of the things that we talked about today. Your opinion on Fowler and him obviously going back to Laval. Of course, about Lafreniere, like we just spoke about. Is he a player that you like to see the Canadiens go out and acquire? And of course, the always ever-present conversation about size. Do the Canadiens have to do anything and everything in order to get bigger now? Or should they stay the course and they have people in the pipeline, players that can come up and ultimately fill that role in at least a bottom six capacity? So we'll end it here. Thanks, as always. Like, subscribe, check us out on all the different social media platforms that are out there. We're putting out content as often as we can, and we appreciate each and every one of you who take a time to hit the like button, put on notifications, subscribe, and all the rest of it. Thank you so very much. And on that note, for Dave, Luca, Vito, I'm Matt, and this was
Get Pucked.